Alright, I have an exciting video about finger independence. Strong fingers and independent fingers. Oftentimes, as a teacher, I'm asked by students, how do I get a stronger fourth finger? Or how do I get a stronger fifth finger? And oftentimes, really, the answer is not how do you develop power behind that finger, but how do you build independence for that movement, right? And so this video is about exercises that develop a neural connection, a clear neural pathway from what we intend to do and the movement that is created. And that is how we develop finger independence primarily, which is often misconstrued as strength. Oftentimes students don't even realize that there are no muscles in the fingers. Fingers don't have muscles, right? Maybe you didn't know that. So when we talk about strength, we're really talking about independence. So what I wanted to do is share with you my favorite exercise for finger independence, and this is Philippe, and he wrote this book of exercises for independence of the fingers, and this is part 1 of 2 volumes. I've never seen the second volume. You can get a lot out of the first volume. In fact, you can get a lot out of the first 2 pages of the first volume. And look how well used this is. I mean, yeah, look at that. This is my cover. This is the back cover. I still have them, so. And here's the book, and yeah, coffee stains. Look at that. So, well used for sure. Well used. So, my students that I work with this on, so I kind of have a love-hate relationship with this because, it's maybe not the most fun thing to practice, right? It's not playing a piece of music. It's still an exercise. But they know it's good for them. And just like anything else that's good for, it's like kale. This is like kale because it is good for you. But do you really, really want to eat it? But you should. So, Philippe, independence of the fingers exercises, which were dedicated actually to Paderewski. He was a fantastic pianist in the early part of the 20th century. And so these were intended, obviously, to develop finger independence, but it goes through a whole slew of exercises that sort of focus on individual movements, right? As well as grouped movements, too. So before we kind of get into this, I kind of want to share a little bit of background of kind of how I was introduced to this and how it developed into eventually Philippe. But one of my very first piano lessons that I had at with a really reputable teacher at a university, the first lesson we had together, she asked me to place my hand in this whole tone shape that I'm showing you here. It's a nice balanced hand position. It's not, tight like a C major position. It kind of opens the hand up, right? And each finger has their comfortable space to work with, right? And we just went through simple stroke exercises like this while holding down gently the other notes and lifting strongly and striking that key strongly while keeping all the other fingers down. And then as I proceeded to get into the third finger, she said, don't grind on the keys. Don't press those keys down. It should just be the weight of your arm holding the keys down. And you need to focus just on that finger. And by the time I got to the fourth finger, I was gripping the keys. I was pushing them down. And I was really pulling that fourth finger up. That's as far as I could get it. And that's as far as I can get that now. And I realized that I was, using so much more than what in terms of like to make that work than what she was asking me to do. And it was, a really strong memory because when I was a little intimidated by her, she was a fantastic pianist, my very first piano lesson, and we're doing this like super remedial stuff that, I didn't necessarily want to be doing. I wanted to be jamming out on the piano, but it was really revealing, and it was impactful to me at that time because I realized that I had a lot to learn, right? And I had a lot to develop, because what I was trying to do was not actually happening. It was like impossible. So what was actually occurring at that moment was I didn't have a strong neural connection between what I was intending to do and the results, and that movement, right? So I had to build those, and fast forward maybe 10 years and maybe not so many, but 7 years or something like that, I discovered Philippe through another teacher, and it was basically the same concept, but what it did was open up that position from whole tone into now fully diminished sevenths. So notice how I'm playing 10 notes here. All my fingers are playing a note. And so it really opens it up farther than that position did. And that is how we begin Philippe's independence of the fingers, is to learn fully diminished seventh chords with an octave stretch. Okay? So as you can see here, in the beginning of these, I have, can you see that? There you go. I have listed here all of the fully diminished seventh chords, both hands, climbing up chromatically. Okay? So these are really important to learn. So this is like just the preliminary aspect of this. And if you don't know how to play all of the fully diminished seventh chords in every position without thinking about it or without fishing for the notes, then you got some work cut out for you, because that's going to take you a lot of time if you've never done that before, but extremely beneficial for you, because so much music uses fully diminished seventh chords, especially in the Romantic period. Chopin and Liszt loved these, and oftentimes they're the moment in the reading and the learning of a piece that students kind of panic, right? Things become less major and minor focused, right? Or within this diatonic setup, right? And suddenly, whoa, sharps, flats, double sharps, mixed in the chord at the same time. And it's like harder to process. But once you get to be really familiar with these, you'll be able to recognize them quickly and be able to find them really fast. And then, so this independence of the finger exercises is multifaceted in the sense that you really are going to know your fully diminished seventh chords and be able to find them very quickly by learning this. Okay? So that's step one, is get these under your fingers. Incredibly beneficial. So here we go. How do we do that properly? Well, first let me just explain what the chord's doing here. So we're taking the octave and we're splitting that octave evenly with minor thirds. Minor third, minor third, minor third, minor third. That's your fully diminished seventh chord with an octave stretch. Okay? Left hand has to join this, also a minor third below. So I have this stack of minor thirds all the way up using 10 notes. Now, we have to do this in every position as I work my way up the piano. Notice my fingers know exactly where to go. They're not fishing like, the next note's there, and then the next note's down there, and then that's where that one goes, and that one goes there. It has to be instantaneous, right? I need to find those notes, rather snap into those notes without searching, okay? So the first thing I have students do is just to take octaves and move chromatically up the piano. And you'll notice there's different sort of positions with that. So there are these sort of parallel movements, white to black to white, and then they start to switch, and it's white, black, white, black. So trying to get used to what that feels like to move minor third octaves apart from one another, okay? And then finally is to add the other notes. And when you do that, make sure, and probably best to do it one hand at a time, is when you first learn these, is to move the octave and let the other fingers fall into position to the next chord. And it's, again, really important to not fish for the notes. Now, the cool thing is, once I've made it to here, I've learned all of them. Because once I take that 3 steps, if I go another one, I'm actually right back where I started. I've just inverted that first chord. So there's my C, right? Same notes, now on the E flat, right? Or D sharp, or whatever you want to call it, depending on how it's spelled. So there you go. This chord inverts into the same shape. It's kind of like a circular chord in that sense, right? It inverts into itself, right? That makes sense. So it doesn't change shape. And so it still is a stack of minor thirds, right? So by the time I invert that chord there, I've already am at the same place where I started. So you have 3 chords to really learn. But of course, you got to get used to the positions and changes and feel that all of them do in all their different inversions, right? So that's going to take a long time. If you've never seen or never worked with something like that before, it can take months, really, to get it to, I mean, it depends on the student, right? But it can take a really long time to be able to play those without fishing around. So be super patient with it, and it'll pay off. The next step is to actually get into the finger independence exercises, kind of where we started this video. So once that's in place, now I have a chart to follow to apply every one of these exercises to. So I'll read the opening instructions. It says, all exercises are to be transposed following the illustration above, which is what I showed you. Practice slowly with a very supple arm and strong finger action, depressing each key to the bottom with a full, rounded, even tone. Very, very important. Only the first 2 harmonic forms of each exercise are given. The remaining 10 transpositions have to be sought out by the player, who is, by this means, prevented from practicing in that dull, mechanical way which so often acts disastrously on the musical instincts of even the most gifted. Okay, well, with this simple material and brains, with patience, conscientiousness, clear neural pathway, and careful attention, one will infallibly acquire in short time absolute independence of the fingers. It's quite a statement, but there's some real nuggets in there, right? Simple material, simple conceptually, but like I said, these chords are really challenging for people if they haven't done them very much. Brains, conscientiousness, careful attention. What Philippe is saying here is what I was getting at, which is we have to be in tune with a clear signal about every little movement that we make with intention, right? And we have to create a clear signal, a clear neural pathway, and it might be a brand new one, right? And if it's not, oftentimes we have to sort of get rid of this interference to the signal. I can, discuss a little bit of that as I get into it, but basically that interference to the signal that I'm talking about is really other muscles coming in to recruit. You're recruiting other muscles to assist in that movement, which should be just from the finger. What we're talking about here is finger independence. And if we want true independence, we can't be assisting from large muscle groups like triceps or the lats or something. So I'll go through a couple of these exercises, okay? So the very first one is really quite simple. I'm going to play and hold the thumbs down while I proceed to arpeggiate up and down the fully diminished seventh chord. Notice my thumb's down. It's not pressing, right? It's just resting. All the other fingers are going to strike like pistons, suddenly and with intention. And while I do this, I want to make sure that I'm thinking about every stroke of each finger and that I am not recruiting other muscle groups or other movements to assist in what's difficult. Now with this, I'm very capable of doing this without recruiting other muscle groups or other movements. But as I get to other exercises, which I'll show you in a moment, it becomes much more difficult for me to maintain concentration in isolated movements with intention, with that clear signal. More interference happens as things become more and more difficult. As things become really challenging for some students, or some pianists, you might realize, like, for instance, maybe they start grinding their teeth, right? They tense their leg, curl their toes. I don't know. Like, there could be all kinds of things that happen. We've got to learn to get rid of that so you're focusing on only one movement, only one sensation, right? Independence will result in what we're referring to as strength and power behind those notes. Behind each finger, right? So strength and power, oftentimes when we talk about loud sounds, for instance, of course we can talk about gravity and arm movements and things, but finger strength, is oftentimes, like I was saying, is more about independence, and this is what we're after here. So I'm going to get to I'm going to skip this first series and kind of head into the second series, page 2 here. As things become more difficult, I want to become more aware of other things that could be involved in my movements, right? So here's the first example. Just hold the chord down in series number 2 and play each finger multiple times with intention. I'm holding all the other notes down and I'm not pushing. I want to check in with all those other fingers and make sure I'm not gripping, right? I'm not pushing. They're just there. They're just holding the notes down. And then when it comes to playing the finger I'm required to play, I'm only focusing my movement or my attention on that movement. I'm trying to create a clear signal, a clear neural pathway from my intention to the actual physical movement. As I get to some of the harder fingers to work with, fourth finger especially, I want to make sure that I'm not, jabbing at it or recruiting some other movement in there. It has to be from just the finger. And a great way for students to become aware of this, if they're not able to kind of have that body awareness of what might be being recruited, is for a student to maybe use just one hand and maybe grab their triceps, right? Just rest their hand here and then play that fourth finger, for instance. And that can tell them if they're pushing into the note or not, right? So I'll give a few other examples as well, but basically if we're recruiting other aspects of our movement, right, to assist in a finger motion like this, or finger strike, we're either pushing or pulling, right? I mean, there's two types of movements that our bodies basically do, right? It's you push or you pull. And by doing this test, I can tell a student can be aware if they're recruiting the triceps, which is a pushing muscle, to assist in that movement. And then once they're able to not feel any flexing or any sort of, that muscle just being activated in any way, then they realize, okay, I know what it takes when I'm concentrating on that movement to get rid of that, right? Another one when pushing is the pecs, right? The upper part of the chest. And so oftentimes I'll see, that motion from a student there, right? Just a little bit of ruffling on the shirt or something. I can tell that's pushing motion when we're working on something like this that you shouldn't be doing, right? And the others would be pulling motions, thinking of like just pulling a lever down, right? Oftentimes our students are doing this. And so that can be, from the biceps, the front of the upper arm, and they can do the same test, right? To kind of touch there to see if they're actually using that. And another pull would be like from the lats, right? Pulling from the back to assist in that difficult movement, right? It becomes a challenge when I get into maybe double notes, and I might be pulling that 5 and 4 down instead of focusing on just the finger lifting and the finger striking and nothing else. No lats, no triceps, none of that, right? So you might then say, well, geez, I think I've been using my lats and been using my, pushing motions or whatever in my Chopin, right? And it's like, whoa, wait. Okay. This is not how we play piano. It might seem strange to you that we are actually playing exercises that we don't actually intend to use so much when we play, right? Seems kind of odd. But this is not the way we want to approach all of our playing, by only using just those finger movements and never using anything from the body. Piano playing is whole body movement, right? I mean, there's all kinds of things that are involved in piano playing beyond just the fingers. What this is for, again, is creating independence of those fingers, right? Being aware of what it takes to be able to isolate movements, and creating what's needed to do that, which is a strong neural connection between our minds and that particular movement, okay? Then you can be a better player by applying that when needed to your pieces of music. This is a concentrated form of what's needed to develop independent fingers, okay? So it's not how you're going to approach music in any particular way like that, okay? So, incredibly useful stuff. Try this out and become aware of everything that you do with these focus movements, right? And it takes a hell of a long time to get through one of these. Okay, so here's the second series, exercise 1. I'll do exercise 2, double notes. Feel a little bit of motion that I want to get rid of on that 3 and 4. Okay, that's just the first position. I have 11 more to go up and 12 down. That alone is going to take 20 minutes, right? Probably, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, but oftentimes what this does then is it becomes a exercise to reveal a particular issue, right? So the point is to develop the independence in that neural pathway that I'm talking about. So when you come to a particular set of notes, right, that you notice is developing some more tension than others, that's what you need to be revisiting on a more regular basis, not necessarily the entire exercise or the whole series. You're not going to play this mindlessly like some people do with Hannon and just sit there and then be able to tell me, what they had for dinner the previous day. That's not what this is about, right? This is about, it's an exhausting amount of attention to detail and what we're trying to do. So in terms of the movements we're trying to create. So it is exhausting. And if you're doing it right, it is, right? So anyway, I think that, each student should be in the first weeks of doing this, probably 10 minutes a day is probably okay, and it's going to be real concentrated, really exhausting work in those 10 minutes, and it should be, right? And that's a great way to start your practice session, so you're going into your practice session with a mindfulness behind what we're doing physically at the piano. And in the future, as months progress, I think you can continue that into 5-10 minutes a day, and it's revisiting some of the more challenging ones and kind of skipping around a little bit into the first and second series, and you can get most of the work you need done in terms of building those strong neural pathways with just the first 2 pages of this book. I really firmly believe that. Oftentimes, somebody will see a book of exercises and think, I have to learn the whole book of exercises, or Hannon, the virtuoso pianist. In order to be a virtuoso, man, I got to play this whole book. And then they'll just sit down mindlessly and, be the greatest exercise player ever. And so a tool to reveal to you where your weaknesses are, right? You want to be a better player. You want to have better control and better and more independent fingers. What a great tool, right? If you're going about it the right way. So maybe for the first year of looking at this, ignore the rest of the book and just do pages 1 and 2. And you'll learn a lot about yourself and learn a lot about what it is, what it takes to develop independent fingers. All right. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions at all, put them down in the comments section. If you like this stuff, subscribe. And also in the comments, if you have a specific thing, technical question that you might have, technique question that you might have, put it down there as well. And I would love to entertain some of those topics. So I'll see you soon.